What I'm about to tell you might put your ears and your brain into shock at the same time, so buckle up. Thinking about watching this with a coffee? Don't, because what's in your cup might not be coffee at all. Grabbing some cheese to snack on? Don't do that either. That cheese might literally be wood. The FDA's own data says food $40 billion a year industry. One of the 15 products in this video is fake on 80% of store shelves. One tested 100% fake in a lab, and one contains actual cell dust. Not a joke. 15 products, one by one, and each more shocking than the last. Let's get started.
15. Vanilla extract. Let's start with one of the most innocent-looking items, but the numbers are anything but innocent. The vast majority of vanilla flavoring products on store shelves contain no trace of real vanilla. The flavor inside comes from a synthetic compound called vanillin. This compound can be produced from petroleum derivatives or paper pulp waste. Real vanilla can cost up to $500 per kilogram, the world's most expensive spice after saffron. Synthetic vanillin costs just a few dollars per kilogram. This price gap pushes nearly all manufacturers toward the synthetic version. A bottle of real vanilla extract lists only one ingredient: vanilla, alcohol, water. Anything labeled vanilla flavoring or imitation vanilla is derived from synthetic sources. But the next item is far more unsettling because it actually contains wood. Yes, you heard that right. We're eating literal sawdust. 14. Parmesan cheese. Bloomberg's investigation proved it. Some products labeled 100% Parmesan contain up to 8.8% cellulose wood pulp, sawdust. The FDA's own investigation revealed that one company was mixing cellulose and cheddar cheese into ground Parmesan and selling it as 100% Parmesan. A University of Missouri study found palm oil in 29% of the 52 samples tested. When Walmart's Great Value brand was tested, it was found to contain less than 8% real Parmesan. Target's Market Pantry brand produced similar results. An interesting detail: some manufacturers label the cellulose as an anti-caking agent. This is technically legal, but the legal limit is 2 to 3%. Some tests found this limit exceeded by nearly 3 times. So how do you tell the difference? Real Parmesan is never free-flowing like fine powder. It clumps slightly. Buy it in block form and grate it yourself. Avoid pre-grated. DOP certified Italian Parmigiano Reggiano doesn't have this problem because the certification monitors the entire production process from start to finish. Now let's move to the next item, because almost no one escapes being deceived by this one. 13. Olive oil. Italian authorities disclose this using their own data. 80% of olive oil labeled as Italian contains oil from other countries. Yes, you heard that right. 80%. Among the 11 brands tested in Spain's Extremadura and Andalusia regions, one contained lampante oil, a low-quality oil historically used as lamp fuel that is not fit for human consumption. In Forbes magazine's words, the olive oil on store shelves is neither Italian nor extra virgin. And this fraud is nothing new. It traces back to ancient Rome, one of the earliest documented cases of food fraud in history. How do you identify real extra virgin olive oil? Single region, single harvest date specified, dark glass bottle, and price any extra virgin under $20 for 500 milliliters is not real. When you taste real olive oil, you should feel a slight burn in your throat. That's the effect of a compound called oleocanthal. If it's tasteless, it's fake. Products certified by the California Olive Oil Council are the most reliable choice. The next item is the world's most counterfeited sweetener, and the numbers are genuinely shocking. 12. Honey. The European Commission's investigation: 46% of honey imported into Europe is fake, mixed with rice syrup, wheat syrup, or sugar beet syrup. But the truly shocking figure is this: 93% of honey samples from Turkey turned out to be fake, and 100% of honey samples packaged or blended in England, yes, 100% were found to be fake. This problem grew so large that in 2013, the US Department of Justice launched an investigation called Operation Honeygate and charged 2 major importers with smuggling Chinese-sourced fake honey into the US through other countries solely to evade customs duties. How do you identify real honey? Put a spoonful in water, real honey sinks to the bottom and doesn't dissolve. Fake honey immediately disperses in water or leaves a white trail. Let's pause for a moment because the next item is about what you're actually eating at restaurants. 11. Seafood. Fish. The Guardian's investigation across more than 30 countries, 9,000 samples. Result: 36% of samples samples were mislabeled or fake. England and Canada came out worst. 50% of fish products in those markets were mislabeled. In a separate study, 1 in 5 of the 25,000 seafood samples tested worldwide turned out to be mislabeled. Typically, a cheap fish, like pollock, being sold as a more expensive species, like cod. The most common fraud, cheap varieties of red snapper being sold as premium red snapper. According to the National Food Protection Center, seafood has accounted for 1/3 of all reported food fraud cases since 1980, number 1 on the list. There's also a notable example worth mentioning. A fish species called escolar is sometimes sold in place of more expensive varieties, and federal regulators have flagged it as a species whose consumption is not recommended. Regulators have moved to restrict its sale but cannot eliminate it entirely. If you see wild-caught salmon at a restaurant, pay attention, the next item is exactly about that. 10. Wild-caught salmon. Salmon's natural color is gray-white. The pink color comes from a natural pigment derived from the krill and shrimp that salmon eat in the wild. Farm-raised salmon don't have this natural diet, so some producers add synthetic pigment to the feed, dyeing the salmon to look wild. Even when the label says wild-caught, how do you identify real wild salmon? Price is one indicator. Wild salmon is almost always significantly more expensive than farmed. The flesh is also firmer, and the fat lines are thinner and more irregular. The next item is the most recognized product of Japanese cuisine, and your chances of finding the real thing are much lower than you think. 9. Wasabi. This number will surprise you. Real wasabi is found in only 5 to 10% of restaurants outside Japan, meaning the wasabi you're eating at 9 out of 10 sushi restaurants is fake. Real wasabi comes from a root vegetable, extremely difficult to grow, thrives only in specific climate conditions, and very expensive. That's why the vast majority of restaurants use a mixture of horseradish, mustard powder, and green dye instead. There's an interesting distinction. Real wasabi delivers a soft, brief warmth when it hits your mouth and doesn't hit your sinuses. The fake version strikes your sinuses immediately and intensely. If your wasabi instantly brings tears to your eyes, it's most likely fake. Now, the next item is a spice you probably use every day in your kitchen. 8. Cinnamon. The vast majority of cinnamon sold in American supermarkets is not real Ceylon cinnamon, it's cassia cinnamon. This is legal, but it's almost never disclosed to consumers. The difference seems minor, but it isn't. Cassia cinnamon has a much higher coumarin content than Ceylon, and it's noted that regular consumption of this compound in high quantities may cause concern. The European Food Safety Authority set a daily coumarin intake limit for this reason, and it's emphasized that people who regularly consume cassia cinnamon may exceed this limit. How do you find real Ceylon cinnamon? Look for stick cinnamon labeled Ceylon or true cinnamon, not powder. Ceylon cinnamon sticks consist of thin, easily crumbled layers, while cassia comes in a single thick roll. Now let's move to the next item, another spice that shares the same fate as cinnamon. 7. Ground black pepper. Black pepper faces the same problem as cinnamon and coffee. The moment it's ground, it becomes nearly impossible to see what's been mixed into it. Research has revealed that some manufacturers mix broken fruit husks, papaya seeds, and even sawdust into ground black pepper. These additions are nearly impossible to detect visually or by taste because in powder form, everything looks alike. Real whole peppercorns crack easily when pressed and release a strong, sharp aroma. In fake or diluted ground pepper, this aroma is much weaker. The safest approach? Buy whole peppercorns and grind them yourself. Just like with coffee, this single step reduces the risk of fraud to nearly zero. The next item is the world's most expensive oil, and possibly the most lied about product. 6. Truffle oil. Real truffle is extremely hard to find and extremely expensive. Some varieties sell for thousands of dollars per kilogram, so most people buy truffle oil instead of real truffle, assuming it's olive oil infused with truffle mushroom. The reality, nearly all truffle oils on store shelves are laboratory made. There is no real truffle inside. The flavor comes from a synthetic compound called 2,4-dithiapentane, a substance that chemically resembles the smell of truffle but has no connection to actual truffles. So when you buy truffle oil, you're actually getting laboratory aroma, not truffle. Real truffle products are much more expensive and typically carry a clear statement, such as contains real truffle pieces. Let's pause for a moment because the next 3 items are the most consumed and least suspected products on this list. 5. Ground coffee. The moment a coffee bean is ground, it becomes nearly impossible to see what's been mixed into it. That's why ground coffee is one of the most vulnerable products when it comes to food fraud. Experts estimate that roughly 1/3 of internationally traded coffee is diluted or entirely fake. Research has revealed that some manufacturers mix coffee husks, corn corn, and even twig fragments into ground coffee. The expert's recommendation is clear: buy whole bean coffee and grind it yourself. This single step reduces the fraud risk to nearly zero because nothing can be hidden when the beans are whole. Every bean is visible to the naked eye. The next item is the world's most expensive spice and the most counterfeited product. 4. Saffron. Saffron is the only spice whose weight is compared to gold. Producing 1 kilogram of real saffron requires approximately 150,000 flowers, and from each flower, only 3 tiny threads can be harvested, all by hand. This production difficulty makes saffron more expensive than gold in some years. This price makes it the world's most counterfeited food product. Fake saffron is typically produced using corn threads, dyed silk threads, or turmeric powder. How do you tell the difference? Real saffron placed in water slowly releases a golden yellow color. It takes minutes. Fake saffron releases color instantly and intensely because it's made with dye. The next item is the queen of luxury foods, and the only way to identify the fake is the hot water test. 3. Caviar. Caviar is one of the world's most expensive food products. Some varieties sell for hundreds of dollars per ounce. This price has made it an extremely attractive target for fraud. Fake caviar is typically made from the eggs of much cheaper fish species and labeled as a more expensive variety. In the US, federal agents have broken up multiple fake caviar operations. This is not a surface-level issue. It's an organized criminal network. How do you identify real caviar? The eggs should be uniform in size and have a glossy appearance. Fake caviar typically looks dull, and the eggs are irregular in shape. The hot water test also helps real caviar reacts to hot water with a specific aroma, while the fake version cannot produce this reaction. 2. Maple syrup. Making a real bottle of maple syrup requires more than 40 gallons of tree sap. That's why real maple syrup is so expensive. A single bottle can run up to $10. The vast majority of maple-flavored syrup products on store shelves contain no real maple sap. Instead, they use corn syrup and artificial maple flavoring. A bottle of real maple syrup lists only one ingredient: maple sap. If any other substance is listed corn syrup, artificial flavoring, preservative, it is not real maple syrup. And we've arrived at the final item. This is a fraud older and more widespread than all the others. 1. Milk. Adding water to milk is the oldest food fraud in history. In 19th century America, this was so widespread that swill milk, obtained from diseased cows fed on distillery waste, led to thousands of people falling ill and triggered serious public health crises. Modern versions are far more sophisticated, but equally deceptive. Some producers dilute milk with water to increase volume. Others alter the fat content to make it inconsistent with the label. The FDA conducts regular inspections on this issue, but by the very nature of food fraud, it is extremely difficult to detect. Experts estimate that the vast majority of food fraud never comes to light.
Now you know all 50, and every single one is already in your kitchen. This $40 billion industry was coming straight out of your pockets. But now you know how to tell what's real. So, which one shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments, please. And remember, no label at the store owes you the truth. Subscribe to Stockpile Man. This is where we talk facts. See you soon. Bye bye.